Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel from Evelyn and Peter, and today I have a cute little crochet tank top design for you guys. So here is what it looks like. Very simple and straightforward. The back is racer back style, which I love, and it's actually pretty quick to make because there's not a whole lot of yarn going on up here, no sleeves to make, anything like that, so it worked up very quickly. I used Line Brand's Kobu yarn for this one. This is the pale pink color and it doesn't take much yarn, so this is the size small, and I think I used about 1.5 little cakes of this Kobu. Here it is here. All the specific yardage for all of the sizes is listed on my blog. The pattern is free on the blog, so for whichever size you want, you can find all the info you need for that. I have sizes extra small through 5X available, so you can go check that out. I will link that below. And then this is also a Lion Brand kit as well, and in the kit you get the yarn, and you can change out the yarn color if you want, and then it also comes with the digital download for the pattern. So I'll link that as well. And then of course the PDFs are available on my Etsy and Ravelry, and I'll put those in there. So for this pattern, it's worked in 2 separate panels from the bottom up, and I'm just using the simple and basic little single crochet V-stitch, a very common stitch, and I just love how it turned out. The texture with this tank top, I'll give you guys a little bit of a close-up. Let's see. So it turned out really pretty, really simple. It goes really quick once you get going with the stitch. So all of the V's are made into the center of the V from the row below. And then once you get up here to the, on the front panel to the shaping, you'll do some decreasing here and some decreasing on the other side. And then on the back, you're gonna work up until those decreases on the front, so just before, but then we're gonna tie off on the back and then join our yarn in again and finish off this little rectangular shape here. And then the straps are added last, and you can adjust the length of these straps if you want. If you find that you need them a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, you can do that. And then if you want a longer tank top, you can do that as well. I recommend to just add more rows in both the front and the back panel in this section here. So along the side, right before you get to the decreases here on the front panel is where you'll add your rows if you want it to be a longer tank top. And then just make sure you keep count of how many rows you add to the front panel, and then you'll add the same amount to the back panel before you tie off to do this little, to do the racer back section up here. So super easy and straightforward. I hope you guys like this pattern. I'm trying to think if there's anything else you need to know about it. I don't think there is. I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial, and let me know if you have any questions. You can email me and I'll link that in there as well, or I'll put my email in the description. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys in the next
For this project, you're going to need a lightweight yarn. I'm using Line Brand's Kobu yarn in the color pale pink, and all the exact yardage for all the sizes is available on my blog. You're also going to need a G 4mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, and a yarn needle to weave in your ends. So both the back panel and the front panel start off exactly the same, and I'm going to show you a little swatch on how to do that. So we're going to begin with the slip knot. Insert your hook and then just pull tight. And to start off the row, we're going to be doing foundation single crochet stitches. So yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through. Do this twice, so chain 2, and then we're going to be working into that back bump of the very first chain. So insert your hook into the back bump, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first loop only, and then yarn over, pull through both loops. And this is one foundation single crochet stitch. We're going to do the same thing again. Insert your hook into the bottom of that first stitch that you made, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through one, yarn over, pull through two. So this is our second foundation single crochet. Again, do it on the bottom of the previous stitch under both loops, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through one, yarn over, pull through two. So basically we are just combining the starting chain and the first row by using a foundation single crochet. If you don't know how to do this, or you don't want to attempt to do this, if this is a new stitch for you, you can also just chain instead. So I'm making the size small and I'm making 74 foundation single crochets. And if you do not want to do the foundation row, you can chain one more than what the pattern calls for. So if you were making a size small, you could chain 75 and then work single crochet stitches into the second chain from hook and across. But I'm going to work 74 foundation single crochet, so go ahead and do as many as your size calls for. So I'm just showing you a little mini swatch for this first part of the top. So obviously your piece is going to be a lot longer than this, but here is my little sample. So I have my foundation row and we're going to start row 2. So chain 1 and turn your work. And for row 2 is where we're going to begin doing our V stitches. So in that very first single crochet, work a single crochet. And then we're going to skip over that next stitch and then work a V stitch into the following. So make sure you put your hook under both the front and the back loop. And then we're going to work a V stitch. So for a V stitch, we're going to do one single crochet and then chain 2. And then we're going to work a second single crochet all into the same spot. So that equals one V stitch. And we'll use this to count out our stitch count as well. Then we're going to skip 2 instead of 1 this time, so skip over 2 and then work a V stitch into the following. So again, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet all into the same spot. Going to do the same thing, skip over the next 2 and then work a V stitch into the following. So single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. And then just do this all the way across the row, V stitch, skip 2, V stitch, skip 2, and then do this until you get to the very end of the row, until there's only a couple of stitches remaining, and I will show you guys how to finish off row 2. Okay, so now we're coming up to the end of row 2 and I have 2 single crochets remaining from row 1. And to finish off the row, you're just going to skip 1 and then work a single crochet into the final stitch. So instead of skipping 2, you're just skipping 1 like at the beginning of the row. Work a single crochet, chain 1, and turn your work. And so I have a total of 24 V's for my stitch count, and you'll see that in the written pattern. So I have 24 V stitches and 2 single crochets, which are those 2 single crochets on the ends of the row. And now we are going to be working our stitches into the V's from here on out. So work 1 single crochet into that very first stitch. So we've chained 1, turned our work, 1 single crochet. And then now we're going to be working our V stitches into the chain spaces of the previous V's. So insert your hook into the chain 2 space. So it's not into the single crochet and it's not into the chain, it's just into the space in between. And then work a single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet all into that chain space. And then we're just going to skip over the next couple of single crochet, and then in the next chain 2 space, work another V stitch. So this is basically what we're going to be doing throughout the entirety of the pattern, is working a V stitch into the V stitch of the row below. So do this all the way across your row. Just single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into that chain 2 space of the row below. And then I will show you guys how to finish off the row when we get to the end. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of the row and we're just going to finish off by working 1 single crochet into that final single crochet of the previous row. And so our stitch count is the same. We still have 24 V stitches for the size small, and then you're going to chain 1 and turn your work and just repeat row 3 throughout the rest of the pattern until it calls you to stop and we work our decreases in shaping. So just repeat row 3. For mine, I'm doing 39 rows total. So I have rows 1, 2, and 3, and then I'm going to repeat rows 4 through 39 is just a repeat of row 3, which is the row I just showed you, working V-stitches all the way across, working a final single crochet, chaining and turning. And so this is what my panel looks like now, one long big panel, and we are going to start the armhole shaping of the front panel. So this is our front panel here, rows 1 through 39 for the size small. Now I'm going to show you how to do some of the decreasing and shaping beginning at row 40. Okay, so after you've turned your work, we are going to be doing some slip stitches. So in that very first single crochet made, you're going to work a slip stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through the stitch and the loop on your hook. And then in the second single crochet, which is part of that first V stitch, you're also going to do a slip stitch. And then into the chain 2 space of that first V-stitch, you're going to work a slip stitch as well. And then depending on the size that you're making, you might repeat this and have more slip stitches, or if you are doing a smaller size, you might not have any at all. So for the size small, we're slip stitching 3 times, and then we're going to go directly into a single crochet. So then into the next stitch, we're going to work 1 single crochet. And now we're just going to be doing our regular stitch repeat across with the V stitches. So we have 3 slip stitches, a single crochet, and then you can see we are coming up on the next V stitch. So in that chain 2 space, just work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. So just a regular V stitch. And then you're going to do this across the row until you get to the amount of V-stitches that it calls for in the written pattern for your size. So I'm just going to do V-stitches across until I only have 1 V-stitch remaining, and then I'll show you how to finish off the row on the other side. Okay, so for the size small, I have 1 V-stitch remaining in that final single crochet. And we're just going to leave this unworked because we slip stitched over 3 times on the beginning side. So now we have to leave 3 spots unworked as well to match it up. So we're just going to finish off by skipping that last leg of the second to last V and just finishing with a single crochet into the leg of the last V. So on the right leg of the last V, we're just going to finish with a single crochet and then leave the remaining stitches unworked so that it matches up with the other side. So on this side we had 3 slip stitches and then a single crochet, and then on the other side we're going to leave those 3 spots unworked and have a single crochet as well. So that is the end of row 40. And we have a total of 22 V-stitches and 2 single crochets for this row. So for row 41, we're going to continue decreasing. I've chained 1 and turned my work, and we are going to be working a V-stitch into the very first chain 2 space. So skip that last single crochet, and then in the first V-stitch of the row, just work a V-stitch. So you chained 1 and you just started off with a V-stitch. We are not doing any single crochets at the beginning or end of this row. We're just going to begin with a V-stitch and work our way across to the last V-stitch of this row. And that is where we will work our final V-stitch as well. So you can see I'm coming up on the end here at row 41, and I have 1 V-stitch and 1 single crochet remaining. And so to finish off the row, you're just going to work a V-stitch into the last V-stitch of the previous and leave the single crochets unworked. So just like that, and then we are going to chain 1 and turn our work and start row 42. So for row 42, we're going to begin by working 1 single crochet into the first V-stitch of the row. So into that very first chain 2 space here of the first V, we're just going to work 1 single crochet stitch. So go ahead and insert your hook into that very first chain 2 space. And then instead of working a V into it, we're just working a single crochet. Now that we have our single crochet, we're just going to continue as normal across by working 1 V-stitch into each chain 2 space all the way across the row until we get to the very last V-stitch of the row. Alright, and then when you get to the last V-stitch of the row, you're just going to work a regular single crochet into this chain 2 space. So finish off with a single crochet, and that completes row 42. So I have a total of 20 V-stitches and 2 single crochets now for the end of row 42. And then we're going to go ahead and chain 1 and turn our work. And then we're just going to repeat rows 41 and 42 as many times as our size calls for. So again, for row 41, we skipped that first single crochet. So that single crochet of the row, you're going to skip over it. And then you're just going to work a V-stitch into the chain 2 space of the first V-stitch of the row below. So single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, all into that very first chain 2 space, and then just do this all the way across the row until you reach the final V-stitch, and you're just going to finish off with a V-stitch as well. Okay, so I'm at the very end and I'm just finishing off with a V-stitch into the last V, and we're going to skip that single crochet. And then I also wanted to point out on this side of your top, it will have this little step or zigzaggy look to it. This is just the way that the decreases fall on this side. You'll notice that on your right side, it's a lot smoother and a nice decrease line, but because of the way that the decreases shape, it's going to leave these little steps, but we are going to cover it up when we add the trim and straps later. Okay, so row 44 is a repeat of row 42, and you're just going to chain 1, work a single crochet into the very first chain space of the first V, and then just V-stitch in each chain 2 space all the way across until your last V-stitch, where we will finish off with a single crochet. Okay, so I've made my way to the end of the row, and I'm just going to finish by working a single crochet into the last chain 2 space of this row, and that finishes row 44. And with every 2 rows that you work here, you're going to be decreasing by 2 V's. So chain 1 and turn your work, and then you're just going to be repeating those 2 rows over again. So again, this portion is just repeating rows 41 and 42 over and over until you have the correct amount of rows for your size. So I'm going to do this for size small until I have a total of 48 rows. So again, you will have a different amount of rows depending on your size, so make sure you check the written pattern for that information. Alright, so this was the end of row 45, so I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. And then for row 46, it's going to be a row 42 repeat, so I'm just going to work 1 single crochet into that very first V-stitch. And then I'm going to V-stitch across the row and then finish off with a single crochet into the last V-stitch of this row. Okay, so I'm finishing off with my final V-stitch of this row, and then I'm just going to chain 1, turn my work, and repeat the rows just one more time. So I have one more repeat of each row. So I'm going to start off this one by working a V-stitch into the first chain 2 space. So I'm going to skip that single crochet and work my V-stitch. And then just V-stitch across the row and finish off with a V-stitch in the last V of this row as well. Okay, we're in the last row of our shaping, so I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, work 1 single crochet into the very first V-stitch of the row, and then just V-stitch across until I get to the last chain 2 space, and then I'm going to finish with a single crochet on that end as well. So this was row 48 for me, and I'm going to be finishing off with a total of 14 V-stitches and 2 single crochets. The 2 single crochets again are the singular crochets on each end of this row. So I have 14 V's and 2 single crochets, and that is the end of the front panel. So again, depending on your size, you might have several more rows of decreases and your shaping might look slightly different, but this is for the size small. So once you finish the front panel, you need to repeat some rows for the back panel. So the back panel is the same as the front. You're going to repeat rows 1 through 39 for the size small. And so it's just finishing off and repeating before we do the decreases on the front panel. So whichever row you ended on right before the decreasing is as many rows as you need. So for the size small, this is rows 1 through 39 of the back panel, and that's just a repeat of 1 through 39 of the front panel. And now we're going to be doing the shaping for the back panel. So after you work those rows, make sure you tie off, and then we're going to be joining in with some new yarn to make this little rectangular shape at the top of the back panel of our tank top. So depending on your size, you're going to be counting in a certain amount of stitches. So make sure you've turned your work after that last row that we made of the back panel. And then for the size small, I'm going to be counting in a total of 9 V-stitches from the right hand side of my top. So you can see I put my hook in to that 9th stitch to hold my spot. So depending on your size, you'll be counting in a different amount of stitches. So from the right hand side of my top, I counted in a total of 9 V stitches, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the left leg of the 9th V stitch to join. So this is the 9th V-stitch and that left single crochet of the 9th V-stitch. So on the left leg, I inserted my hook, chained 1, and then I worked a single crochet all into the same spot. So I joined into the 9th stitch on the left side, and then in the very next V-stitch is where we're going to begin our regular stitch repeat and work a V-stitch into it. And then work another V-stitch into the following. And I'm going to be doing this for a total of 6 V-stitches for the size small. So I counted 9 stitches in, joined my work with a slip stitch into the left leg of the 9th stitch, chained 1 and worked a single crochet into the same spot, and then I began my V-stitches for a total of 6 V-stitches for this portion of the back panel. So for your size, you might have more or less V's. It just depends on the math and the size that you're making. So here's my last V-stitch. And then we need to make sure that we finish off the same way we started, and we have a single crochet on the end here. So we need to finish with a single crochet. So skip that single crochet of the V-stitch, and then the next V-stitch on the right leg, you're going to finish with a single crochet stitch. So now we have 6 V-stitches and 2 single crochets, chain 1 and turn our work. And so now we're just going to be repeating row 3 for the rest of this section. So I chained 1, worked a single crochet into the very first single crochet, V-stitch across, and then finish off with a single crochet into the last single crochet of the row. So for my size small, this is rows 41 through 52, and I'm just repeating row 3. So again, just repeat across the regular stitch repeat that we've been doing throughout the pattern, as many rows as it calls for your size. Okay, so I've completed all 52 rows for the back panel, and now we are going to tie off and start our straps and seaming the front and back panel together. So first we want to seam up the sides of both the front and back panel. So you want to place your pieces together right sides facing. So you're going to place the front and the back panel so that the correct sides of the tank top are facing together, and then we're going to seam the sides together. So for the right side, row 1 is considered the right side of your panel, but if you want it the other way, that's totally fine too. It really doesn't matter with this tank top. You can switch it if you want as well. Just make sure they are evenly that you pick the right side as the same side for both panels. And now we're going to join our yarn in to the very bottom corner of either of the sides. Make sure that you're at the very bottom stitch and then just stick it through both of the panels. So you want to make sure your hook is in both the front and back panel. And then you're just going to yarn over your hook and pull through the yarn through both panels and the loop on your hook as well. And then we're just going to do this all the way up the side of our shirt until we hit those decrease rows. So again, insert your hook, make sure your panels are lined up evenly. It might be a little bit difficult to get your hook into the sides of the panels because you're not actually working it into the top of an actual stitch, you're just working it into the sides of the rows. So it might be a little tight at some points, and that's okay. You can just wiggle it in and then yarn over, pull through both panels, and pull through the loop on your hook. So again, do this all the way up the side until you get to the end of the back panel and you're at the decrease rows of the front panel. And then you can just go ahead and tie off and repeat this on the other side as well. So now we're going to add a little bit of trim and the strap. So you're going to go ahead and take your yarn and just join with a slip stitch on the right hand side. Your tank top should be right side facing out, so your seam is on the inside and your front panel is facing up. And then you're just going to take your hook and yarn and slip stitch to join right there at the seam along the side of your tank top that you just made. And then you're just going to loosely slip stitch up the decrease rows, so up the little side of the front panel. So you can see I'm working up the decrease rows right now on my front panel on the right side. And you could also do this as single crochet if you wanted to. I'm just going to do slip stitches, and this helps cover up the little wavy portion of our decreases. But if you want yours covered up a little bit more, you can do single crochet as well. So this is what it looks like after I slip stitch up the side. And we're just going to do this until we reach the very top corner of the front panel on our very last row that we had made. So I'm coming up on the last row here, and I'm going to be making my final slip stitch into that very corner stitch. So right where I tied off is my final slip stitch. And then now we're just going to go straight into creating the straps. So don't tie off here. Just going to slip stitch up the side. And then now we're going to be doing some chaining. So I'm going to chain 35 for a size small. So go ahead and do that, and then I will show you how to connect the straps. So the chain count will change depending on your size, so just check that as well. And then once you have the correct amount, you can just slip stitch to join in the very corner of the last row of your back panel. So just work a slip stitch and then turn your work, and you're going to slip stitch back down the chain that you just made. So in each of your chains, just insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through the chain and the loop on your hook, and do this all the way down until you are back at the very beginning where you started your chains on the front panel. All right, and then once you reach the front panel again, this is where we started our chains, and you're going to finish by putting your hook in that very same stitch and working your last slip stitch. So that finishes off the first strap, and then you can go ahead and tie off. And if you want to try your top on before cutting your yarn, I recommend that as well. And you can see if you need to adjust your chain length at all. So now is the perfect time to do it before you weave in your ends and move on to the second side if you want to adjust your chains. Okay, so now we need to do the same thing on the other side, but it's going to be slightly different. We're going to be doing our slip stitching down the side last instead of first. So you're going to slip stitch to join your yarn in the very last row of the front panel in that very corner stitch. So just slip stitch to join into it and then do the same amount of chains that you did on the first side. So I'm going to chain 35. And then once you've worked your chain, you can just slip stitch to join into the very corner stitch of the last row of the back panel. Make sure your chain is not twisted. And then just join in. And then you're going to do the same thing as the first strap and slip stitch down the length of the chain. And then once you get back to where you joined, you're going to keep going now instead of tying off. So we're going to slip stitch down the decrease rows of the other side of the front panel. So again, you're not working it into any actual stitches, just into the sides of the rows. So it might be a little finicky, but you're just going to loosely slip stitch. And then if you single crocheted instead of slip stitching on the first side, make sure you do that on this side as well. And this is the side that we are hiding those little uneven decreases. So just go all the way down those decrease rows until you reach the side seam of your tank top. So once you work your straps and then do the slip stitching down the side, you can go ahead and tie off your work. If you want, you can also try on your tank top again at this point before weaving in the ends, just to make sure you're happy with the strap length. So go ahead and do that. And then when you are all through, all you need to do is weave in your ends to complete the tank top. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you in the next one.